Hi, and welcome back to our series, Innovations in the ABA Field. I'm Jenna Kokoski, Senior ABA Business Advisor with Martin ABA Advisors. And today I have with me Patrick Beja. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, it's Fago, but it's a very
Beja. Okay.
common and difficult one to do. So I've heard that one as well as many
I'm
others.
sure you have. Well, Patrick is the founder of the app FirstWork that focuses on making discrete trial training more engaging, fun, and easy for both the child and the clinician. So thanks for joining us today, Patrick.
Thank you so much for having me. It's wonderful to be here. I've been keeping up with all the innovations you've been sharing about, and it's super exciting to be a part of the podcast.
Awesome. Well, can you start out by telling us about yourself and what kind of got you to the point of creating an app for the field?
Absolutely. So I am a self-professed behavior nerd. I studied behavioral neuroscience as an undergraduate and was actually planning to go into a clinical career after I worked in the lab after graduating from undergraduate, but it was COVID. And so everything and all of my plans got a little bit changed. And I ended up finding myself working at an ABA center. And it was this incredible transformative experience for me. I realized that, I wanted to be closer to this work and this population, and that behavior was being used in a way that I had never really seen before, frankly, in ABA, because in a lot of other fields of behavioral science, you see, this sort of detached attitude, and it's something that has a lot of really great promise, but the impact is often a little bit diffuse and hard to see. But
Mm-hmm.
ABA is almost the opposite of that, where you have these wonderful principles, and when they're applied, you can see this, transformative outcome sometime in the course of months. So it was something that was just so exciting to me. But while I was there, I realized that a lot of the processes that were inside of ABA, which are really replicable and are
Mm-hmm.
often very similar across different use cases, had been not systematized very much, which led to there being a lot of extra work for people and a difficulty with iteration and kind of moving the best practices along. It kind of felt like everybody was doing their own thing over and over again,
Yeah.
which just really wasn't very efficient. And as a technician, was something that was really overwhelming as well, because there was just all of this new information coming in, and it felt like some of it were things that I, as a technician, really needed to learn, about how you interact with the kids and how you understand the processes that we're applying. But there were other things that felt like there were formulaic and didn't really need to be taught in the same way as some of the core things that we're doing in ABA, like for instance setting up a good discrete trial.
Yeah.
It's wonderful to know how to do that and why it's being set up that way, but there doesn't need to be that really dramatic learning curve of going from I have no idea what this is to being able to set it up really
Mm-hmm.
effectively and quickly every time. So it just felt like a space that could benefit from some systemization, and there were really wonderful processes that I saw that I think could have been made into better systems, and so that's what we're committed to doing at FirstWork.
Yeah. And you came in during COVID, like you said,
Yep.
which is like, I feel like COVID did a lot for our field. Like it forced a lot of the people in our industry to realize, oh, look, there's other ways we can still do ABA that's not just in a clinic or in someone's home only, that there's other ways that you can iterate to do it as well. So you came in at like a crazy time of ABA, but I'm glad that you were able to like see it and spin it and say, all right, what can we do to help make it better?
Yeah,
Um,
no, I think it was like you're saying, it was a really interesting time where I think that all of the assumptions that people had made and the ways that people had
mhm.
done things for so long were disrupted. And like you're saying, I think it kind of presented a really interesting learning opportunity for people where if you have to do things differently, you're going to find that maybe one of those new things that you did might have been better than what you're doing in the first place. So I think there's been a lot of change since COVID,
Yeah.
which has been really interesting to track.
So tell us about FirstWork exactly.
Yeah, I'd love to. So, FirstWork is a DTT programming application which customizes the DTT process all the way from the customization phase to reinforcement. So, our application has a library of targets with thousands of images, so you can really customize and pick any target that's relevant to a learner. We have deep customization settings that allow you to tailor that experience to the exact needs of that learner. And uniquely using a digital framework, you can do some things that would have been really difficult to do with cards. For instance, we have things like difficulty filters that allow you to pick how similar your distractors are to the correct answer, which is something that would take a lot of a lot of going through your binder to go figure
Yes.
that out between each trial. So you can do a lot of really cool things with the customization. And the really unique part about our application is that we took really great efforts to make sure that we could work in the digital space in a productive way. And that's part of our reinforcement and focus component of the app. So FirstWork limits access to fun applications like YouTube or Roblox or anything else that you'd like to do during your learning lessons. So you have a focused environment where the only thing that you can really participate in right now is the learning work that we're doing. But after you complete those lessons, we can then grant time on fun applications like YouTube or Roblox as a reward, which can really bring a lot of motivation and engagement from learners. Because as we know, if we do preference assessments, screen time is coming all the way up at the top for almost every learner. And it's not really our job, I think, to decide what learners want. It's important to kind of fit within the real preferences of kids, especially when you have special interests and things that might be difficult to work within if you're avoiding them. So it's been really exciting to see that engagement component has been something that's been bringing a lot of kids to the table. And notably, another component with the app as well is that by digitizing, there's just so much less to focus on during your lesson, except for your learners. So one of the things I found really challenging when I was running DTT trials is you would do the setup, you'd have to have your cards ready, put them in front of the learner, and there's a lot of downtime. And it's one of those things where kind of going back to that COVID conversation, when you do things the same way for decades, it's sometimes hard to see that as downtime. It's just the way that things are. Of course, you have to set up your next trial. But that's a couple seconds where, that learner is sort of being asked to just sit there and not do very much, which is a really big ask for a young autistic learner.
And then they get distracted, and then you spend more time just bringing them back to the task. And
exactly. So there's just
takes a lot of time in between.
Yeah, there's a lot of downtime. And then as a professional too, your attention gets scattered by needing to track and deliver at the same time, where that was something I always felt was quite difficult, where, on every trial, you need to know what happened and report that. And that's another instant where you need to look away and think about your tablet and, whether you're going to go put that correct answer in or not. And then, of course, if you're, paying attention to the learner, you're going to also have to have a great memory and remember that, the first trial was correct and the second trial was prompted and the third trial was correct. So it just takes a lot of that extra work out of the professional's experience and can make it so that it's a little bit easier to just focus on the learning experience that's happening right in front of you.
So I want to hit on first. So essentially you're locking the rest of the device. They can only access what I'm telling them to access. And then even if, let's say if someone's using like that child's personal iPad to do this on, let's say, and they have like 500 other apps on there. Can you, even during like the reinforcement time, only like say, I'm only going to give access to XYZ?
Yeah, you have total control over what learners have access to, and they can kind of cache in their time on multiple different apps as well. So say you had 5 minutes of time and they wanted to watch their favorite YouTube video and then play 2 minutes of a game. As long as they had time for that allotted for them, they could switch between multiple apps. So you have total control as the adult administrator about which applications are available and which ones are going to be, restricted. So you have a lot of control. It's, really in the hands of the professional about what you have access to.
And then while you're going through, they're doing DTT, it's collecting the data, right, throughout the whole process. Tell me a little bit about that. What does that look like on the other end? What have you seen? Like, how has that been able to help the clinicians on a regular basis?
Yeah, that's one of the things that people are really excited about, especially once they get to try the application, because I think it's one of those things that you don't think about very much as something that you're always doing. But when you realize that you're not doing that anymore, it kind of feels like, you're the kid on the bicycle and mom took her hands off and now you're riding the bike. It's this great feeling of you're no longer doing this thing that you used to have to do. So our data is formatted in a pretty traditional ABA style. So it's a mastery over time format. So the data is in the same exact format that you're traditionally used to. And it's very easy to access. So you can go look at any target, look at sets of targets, and look at the data. And you can also share them within teams if you'd like as well. So you can really easily make an exported report, which you can share with other folks on your teams. Or if families are using the application as a continued learning option, they can send you reports so that you can check in on the progress that they've been making at home. So it's a really easy system to use. We kind of stuck to the core information and tried to set things up so it's really easy to kind of look at and be like, okay, where are we? We don't need a PhD to look at the data, but it is rich so that you can start to look at everything that's happening. And something really unique about digital data collection as well is that you can have much richer data if you're doing automatic data collection than you can if you're doing manual collection. So if you think about it, there's a lot that's happening in a discrete trial that we typically don't think about. So for instance, how long exactly did it take for you to put in that first response? How long did it take for you to correct after we've made a prompt? These sorts of things are really important and useful pieces of information that traditionally we just don't have access to, because that's not realistic for a
Yeah.
person to be keeping track of. You'd have to be recording it and analyzing the video or
Yeah.
something like that. But by having this automatic data collection, we can move into a world where every data point has a lot of richness to it, as opposed to being something where, we're basically saying, was it correct? Was it prompted? Did they complete it or not? And we can start to move into a universe where, each data point has layers to it, and you can start
Hmm.
to really understand how everything is working together, and start to pull on those data points that might have otherwise not been utilizable to you, and perhaps could have some really important implications about different levels of focus, or when you might want to be working, or things like that.
That's awesome. And I love that you're able to just kind of share that data freely as well, because I think one thing that we're getting better at in the industry, but definitely needs improvement still, is communication with,
Mhm.
not only the families, but the other people on the care team in
Yeah.
general. And so it's great that that's an easy way to communicate, make sure everybody's on the same page. We're all kind of working on roughly the
Yeah.
same thing. Just makes it more like universal whole type of care.
Yeah, totally. And similarly, another thing which I didn't mention about the lessons themselves is, one really cool thing about digitization is that using FirstWork, you can save a lesson and share it with somebody else who's also using FirstWork. So, say you created
Oh,
a really exciting program and you love the targets, like for instance, something about like safety signs or something that lots of learners might want to work on. You could create that preset for your organization, and the next time an RBT is running the safety signs course, they can just use that program. So it's a really exciting way for you to share programs, not have to go reinvent the wheel every
yeah.
time, and then iterate, which I think is going to be one of the most exciting things about systems like FirstWork, where you can take something, see how well it worked,
Hmm.
and then do something about it iteratively, so that we end up with programs that are really, really exciting for learners and have been really well thought out, which is something that's quite difficult when every time you're setting up those cards, you need to have the same exact cards as the next person and lay them out
Yeah.
the same exact way. And that's just very, very difficult to do. But with an app, you can kind of work on that, iteratively within the teams, or kind of within the organ, or the wider
Yeah.
space of ABA even.
Yeah. And then even that makes it easier too. I know when you have like multiple like RBTs working with the
Yeah.
client, and the data looks different because
Yeah.
everybody kind of tracks it a little differently. So that helps make some, consistency. So that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Yeah. Consistency is definitely key.
Yeah. I'm sure before created the app, you did a lot of your due diligence and research on what's kind of out there already. So,
Yeah.
what do you see that's already been out in the space? And then, what are the things specifically that makes First Work different than what's already out there?
Yeah, so I think that there's two main ways that people are currently approaching having the resources they need to deliver these lessons, and the first is kind of the business as usual approach, that started off, kind of even the origins of ABA, with people doing things like clipping magazines and getting images from there.
Yeah.
From there, with the advent of the internet and Google search and images, a lot of people would print images, from online search, which is one of the big ways that people are doing this now.
Hmm.
The other way is using distributed systems like Teachers Pay Teachers and Boom Cards to access resources. And while those have some really great resources a lot of the time, the big difficulty with those platforms is they're not very unified. So you don't have everything in one place. You can't access all of the images you need. You're typically
Hmm.
getting a selection of images. They're not in a digital interface a lot of the time. So you still often have to print and laminate and prepare them and replace them. So while it does allow you to move beyond what you can traditionally do, and save some time compared to doing an image search yourself and preparing all that, there's still a lot left to be desired in terms of really fitting into the organization and the needs, and being something you can iterate on and share within teams and track data automatically. So the big place where FirstWork has kind of moved beyond those sorts of platforms is really in unification, so that everything can be in one place and you don't need multiple apps. You don't need to go get multiple teacher pay teacher sets. It's really just in one place. And then, of course, the really big, exciting element of our application is this screen time restriction component, which we believe is a really key part of, honestly, all digital learning, where the great moderator of digital learning experiences, I think, is the device itself. It's something that
Hmm.
people are incredibly drawn towards. There's every great distractor that's ever, that
Yep.
the kids
All in
care
one
about,
place.
are all in one place. So if you're going to do the learning in the same places, you're going to do the fun. You need to separate that. That's why we don't put the playground inside of the classroom most of the time. It's
Yeah.
outside.
That's a great
Um,
way to look at it. Yeah.
so and obviously that's that reference doesn't hold up perfectly because there are some great uses of play-based classrooms. So I don't want to poo-poo
Yes,
that,
yes.
but just in general, it's I think that idea is kind of how we approach the learning environment, where if you're not controlling that learning environment and taking advantage of digital rewards, it's going to be hard to create sustained engagement on an application. And something we've heard from a lot of folks who have been using the application is actually that some kids will start to view FirstWork as a preferred activity, even within like a few times trying it. So it's it's something that can kind of shift the way we interpret what we're doing on our devices, where by kind of linking the fun and the work, you can view it as something that's in totality fun. And so you might want to choose to do that, where when you think about most digital learning experiences, kids don't ask to go do that. They ask to go do Roblox. So it's a nice setup that way, where, unlike those systems where you have to deal with some of the digital distractions as well, we can really minimize those and kind of turn them into an advantage for you.
Nice. So as you've been, more and more people and businesses are using FirstWork, what are some of the kind of unexpected or intrinsic ways that it's helping ABA businesses?
Yeah, so there's three real buckets of impact that we're keeping close tabs on. One of them is time saving for professionals, which is something that we've been seeing is a major benefit. ABA is a field where there's a lot of love that goes into this work, and really really incredible people who care a lot more about the impact that they're making than what they have to do that a lot of the time. And so professionals will spend hours. Sometimes folks are spending upwards of 5 hours every week creating these kinds of materials. And it's often going to be those employees that are really the core of your team, where these are people who have been there for years. They run big teams, and everyone relies on them to make sure they have all the things that they need.
Yeah.
And because ultimately learners will not be able to learn the things that are important to them today if these materials are not created, it's something that these people have to do, and it causes stress and just takes a lot of time. And often this is happening outside of work hours as well. So this is often truly a labor of love. They're not being paid for this. So from a time saving perspective, it's something that can save huge amounts of time for the team, and folks are really excited about that time saving. There are actually some BCBAs who are independently paying for their accounts and all of their RBT accounts out of their own personal paycheck because it's saving them so much time and is that much better than what they were doing before. So if you can provide that kind of benefit to those team members, it's worth a lot to them. On the other hand, the organizations also can directly benefit from the cost savings as well. Printing and laminating are some of those sneaky costs that kind of sneak into every budget and often kind of go underappreciated. But these costs are very significant over time. Often cost organizations thousands every year to create these materials. And so by switching to an app-based system, it's significantly less expensive than what you would traditionally pay for all these materials in the first place. So often there is a direct financial benefit to organizations for moving this direction. And then finally, we're seeing that engagement with learners is something that has been reported to be really high with the application, which I think is incredibly important for ABA businesses, because ultimately providing those high quality services is really what ABA is all about. And so in a lot of cases, we're finding that kids are asking for the app. They're really engaged in ways that they hadn't been engaged before. We've heard, some really exciting stories about kids who had previously not been responding at all to screenshot training in the traditional format. And after introducing FirstWork, they were, demonstrating they had these skills the whole time and just, weren't that interested in doing flashcards. So for a lot of kids, it's something that's a really great fit. And we're also seeing that it's really fast. So this is something we're doing a lot. We're actually doing some research studies on. We have 2 that are getting started this month, looking at the efficacy of the app. But by reducing all of that downtime that we talked about previously during those sessions, you can just deliver the questions one after another, and they'll be completed much, much more quickly. And it's less of a burden because, that other time that you're spending there kind of counts towards what we're asking for the learners. So we don't have really robust data on this yet, but just anecdotally, what we're seeing is people are able to complete a lot of trials in a very short period of time. And the learners are, kind of perceiving it as a little bit less burdensome than, the traditional alternative. So it's a really exciting way to engage learners and be able to deliver those speedy lessons that are a little bit lower impact than a traditional setup where, there's a lot being asked of learners.
That's great. That's great. Those 3 different buckets of ways that it's impacting businesses. And it's great to see that you guys are doing more studies to make sure the efficacy of it, and that it really is beneficial to both, the clients and the clinicians and the business owners as well. So as you kind of look to the future of the technology in the ABA field, what are some things that kind of are like exciting, or things that, you know, our clinicians or business owners should probably be on the lookout for? Since you're in the tech world, you're in
Yeah.
this more, I'm asking you. You definitely know way more than I do about this.
Well, I'm not so sure about that, but I can speak to two trends that I've been seeing that I think are really exciting. So one is the rise of rapid diagnostics. I expect that in the next couple of years, we're going to start to see some rapid diagnostic tools being accepted as, you know, legitimate ways to do diagnoses. And I think the thing that'll be really interesting about that will be that it'll present both opportunities and challenges. Where I think that for the autistic people themselves, this is obviously an opportunity in that, you know, getting diagnosed earlier is just much better than not. So it's going to be great in the long term, I think, for the field to just have a better grasp on how many people there are out there who could benefit from services, and having those people be looking for services earlier in life. But I also think that from a business perspective, there will be some challenges associated with that, in that once those rapid diagnostic tools are introduced, I think that there will be, you know, a big influx of new people who, you know, and they were the same people all along. It's not like there's new people, but if you're able to identify people with autism more efficiently, there's just going to be more people who are looking for services. So I think that it'll be an interesting time in the next few years as rapid diagnostics increase, just kind of seeing that, coping with that demand, and sort of getting into that next phase where most people are going to be diagnosed much earlier in life. And so I think there will be an interesting transition period there as that starts to happen. I don't know which tool will be the one that will kind of win the day, or if there will be multiple there, but there's some really exciting work in eye tracking and, you know, biomarkers and things like that. So who's to say about what will be effective, but it looks like, you know, things are tracking in that direction, and that will probably become much more common. So definitely something to look out for there. I think that's really exciting. And another is, I think the rise of AI in ABA is kind of happening right now. There's some really exciting companies that have, you know, big outside funding, really, you know, great teams working on solutions to bring AI tools into ABA to help with, you know, really almost every element of things that are happening in ABA. It's hard to say which ones are going to be, you know, really effective. I'm sure some will be really successful, and others will be ones that are not as interesting to people. But that's, I think, something as a ABA business owner I'd be looking out for, just kind of keeping tabs on, you know, these big AI projects, and seeing how they might fit into what you're doing. Because I'm sure organizations that are able to adopt those and introduce those quickly will have a really big advantage compared to others. Because I think that the trend I see in AI/ABA is that most of it is oriented towards bridging the gap for services by making, you know, the field just more efficient in general. So some companies will be able to kind of claim those advantages and have more impact with the same number of people. So I think those organizations will kind of find themselves in a leading position going forward.
Yeah, I agree. I think many businesses need to actually be willing to open up and potentially change some of the ways you do things to try new things, keep up with the times. And like you said, I'm pretty sure the demand for services is not going to be decreasing anytime soon. So you got to keep up with what's the best way to help meet this demand as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Well, thanks for taking the time to share with us and how you're innovating in the field
Thank
now.
you.
Yeah. So if you would like to learn more about FirstWork and how you may be able to integrate it into your business, please click below and we will get you connected.